Hi, welcome back. So I have a pretty good estimate of where the engine and trans goes and a pretty good idea of how high I want it. The engine transmission needs to be on about a 3-degree angle. So I need to really hone in on where the frame rake is. I know front to back that I'm, again, in the ballpark of where I want it to sit. I'm going to have to put the body back on. That's the only way I can guarantee I have it in the right spot. I can make marks and take the body back off, and then I can get everything leveled up and get my angles right, get it centered, and then I can burn in those motor mounts. And I need to clean up this cross member right here. This is what got all hacked up when the last guy put that Pinto motor and transmission in and welded on some horrible transmission mounts. So I need to grind those off, clean all that up, and if I go with the stick shift, I need to cut this top section out for the shifter. It just, my luck, ends up being right there. And then I'll have to reinforce this leg because this leg is what part of the transmission actually mounts to. So I've got my work cut out for me, which brings up the point. In my previous video, I had been talking about trying to decide whether to go with the automatic or the stick. Well, after I slept on it, I remember this engine is tuned and cammed for a stick shift. It's pretty radical cam. It's great for a stick. You put in the clutch and you adjust everything, all the RPMs, but with an automatic, you've got the torque converter, you've got all that liquid that you're moving around, and you've got to have a higher stall converter. There's a whole lot more thought process into going into the automatic. And I am pretty confident that I will have to recam this thing to tone it down for the automatic. I just really don't want to do that. The roller cam, the roller lifters, the roller rockers, all of that is all combined, and the cost of that is close to $1,000. So I really don't want to go through the labor, resealing, regasketing, and the expense of camming it down, tuning it down. It's radical. I gotta admit it sounded fantastic. It ran fantastic. Why mess with it? There's no leaks. So I think I've convinced myself to stick with the stick. So let me move some things around here. Let's get this body on, and I'll set this thing front to back where exactly it needs to be. No matter how many times I do this, it's not easy doing that alone. That's a lot of work. I don't have a lot of tools. I don't have a nice hoist or anything to put the body on and roll the chassis in and out, but it's here. And I thought I was getting lucky that I had about 1 inch to spare here where I could actually move the engine and transmission back. But where it was perfect, because everything slid forward about 1 inch while I was moving everything around. I got it strapped down so it couldn't tip over, couldn't fall out, but it did move. So I'll make dimensions of everything the way it is right now and how far I can move it. I've got body bolts in place, so the body is exactly where I want it. The nose most of the body, so the nose is where it's supposed to be. All the body lines are meeting up. So now I have the ride height perfect for the front. I'll set the ride height where I want it in the back, where the rake that I want on the body, and I think that's about where it is now. So what I'll do is I'll measure how high the rear frame is from the ground, and then I'll know, once I level everything up, I have the height of the tail, I have the height of the nose, and then everything will just fall in place from there. So this is a huge relief to have this done. Here's the gap I have. I'd like to take this back till it's almost touching, and that's 1 1/4 inches. So what that'll do is that will bring this bolt back right enough clearance from this flange that I'll be able to take this intake manifold off if for any reason I need to, without having to pull the whole motor out. And when it comes to alignment, let me get me a light here. The prior owner cut the floor out for the automatic transmission for the Pinto and then made a cover for it. But my linkage, shift linkage, is jamming up against this side of that hump. So I'm going to have to rebuild this hump. I'm going to have to give myself a little bit more clearance here. This is the bottom of the gas pedal. So if I just bring this up, that's about all I have to do to clear all the linkage, is just bring this up straight instead of on an angle. And the way this hump jogs out here for the Willys, it had an overdrive, and that overdrive set in this position, along with this floor I think is used in the Willys wagon as well, so a four-wheel drive wagon would have four-wheel drive mechanisms in here too. So since they shared a floor and I don't need the floor to be this way, I'm going to have to cut up this floor and make it all work, because in order for me to get the body down, I had to move that transmission to the side about 1.5 inches. So it just is throwing everything out of alignment now. But I know exactly where I need to be, and you can see that frame is underneath, and it's got about 1/2 inch or less clearance from the floor to that cross member. So that gives me a really good measurement to where I need my shifter, because that shifter is actually going to be over there a little bit. See that bracket? The shifter will be coming up right next to that bracket. So this answers all my questions I need now for the chassis and the engine placement and the transmission placement and transmission mounts. So I take the body back off, set it aside, and get back to work doing my final cutting and welding. Well, that was one I was dreading. It seems like such a waste of time to put the body on, a couple of dimensions, and take it back off. Level it up side to side, get that motor positioned right, and then start working on these motor mounts. These are the mounts that actually came with the front drop section for the Mustang 2 suspension. They are left and right. They're slightly angled. I would guess they're probably on a 3% angle, but these are made for a 40 Ford. My frame rails are closer together than the 40 Ford, so I'll have to trim these off. So once I figure out where these are positioned, because I need to now lift the motor a little bit more, maybe even an inch more, then I can adjust all of this. My frame is setting where I want it. My engine is setting where I want it. So now I need to trim these brackets. They're a little bit long. So what I'm doing is I've got the motor mount on, I've got the bracket positioned about where I want it. And so I made me a template where I want it to connect. I want it to hit this flange. This flange is on both sides. It's a C shape, U shape, inverted U, and has a plate on the bottom of it. So it's fully enclosed. And then I'm going to weld this bracket to that. So all three pieces of metal will come together for a really strong weld and strong bond to the frame. And then it's inverted like this. This piece comes out pretty much straight, a little bit of an angle. So I need to trim that as well so that I can weld that to the inside of this frame. So I started with my template. I've got that positioned roughly where I want it. And I've marked the frame where I want to trim it. And for me to cut that little section out, it looks like I'm going to have to pull this engine and transmission out, trim that, get it all prepped and ready, put it back in again, trim this bracket. I've gone ahead and marked it where I want that trimmed. So once I trim that, I'll have that correct. Then I'll keep playing with this before I pull the motor out. I'll trim this where I want it. I'll have to do a template for that as well. Hopefully the other side goes as easy as that one did. You can see what I've got now when it's all finished up. I was going to cut that bottom flange off so I could weld a bead all the way across, but I can actually get in there and put a bead across the top. So yeah, it turned out really good. That was nowhere near as hard as I thought it would be. And nowhere near as time consuming either. Trying to figure out all the angles and the way everything fits together, it seems a little overwhelming at times, but by just cutting out some little pieces of cardboard and taping them together, it actually came together really nicely. I went ahead and just tack welded the corners of this all in place so that I can pull this motor out and it'll stay put. So with the motor mount now done, I need to concentrate on the tail. That's the tail mount, and that was the bracket that the guy put in for the Pinto. So I went ahead while I had the grinder out and cut the welds loose of that thing. Pretty amazing. That one hole that's drilled in it was holding a plate that went across this back mount to hold the Pinto automatic transmission in. You can see by the quality of the weld, there wasn't much holding it. There was a little bit holding it right there, and a little bit holding it right there. It worked, but not ideal for a Pinto and driving clowns up and down a road at a slow speed for parades. Well, it worked. You can see how hacked up that is. I do still need to get rid of that ugly mess. They got a lot more weld on this end. I pulled the engine and transmission out, cleaned up these cross members with all that globbed on horrible welding and brackets and things that the Pinto guy did. From the top of the lower cross member to the underneath side of the actual mounting plate for the rear mount, I've got 4 inches. I have the Mustang rear transmission mount. I thought about using this and making up some brackets so that I could put a bolt through. It's really nice how it just swings out of the way if you want to do any work. Because of the way this cross member is and the way that the tail goes through here, it's not an easy drop out if you had to replace the clutch. It's one of those things that it's going to have to slide back and then come out once all the car is together. So the pieces that I would have to build to make this work is just too complicated. They're not parallel, they're not the same height, so I counted that one out. Well, I have the old one from the Pinto, and I thought about using it, but it's been hacked up and welded on, and it's just so ugly that it's not worth restoring and making that pretty. So I thought, well, I'll just use this to mock it up and I'll buy another one. Well, this stupid thing is so expensive, I can buy a transmission mount custom piece for hot rods out of different catalogs. So that's out. So if I'm going to build something, then I'm just going to get some channel and some angle iron, maybe some pipe, and I'll just build me one. So now that I know where it needs to be, height-wise, I need to figure out exactly where it needs to be front to back. Once I get that all figured out, then I'll be able to mock something up. What I had is, I have some leftover channel from a couple other projects. This piece was made ages ago. If I just cut this pipe off, drill a couple of holes, I can get this across that cross member and make this work. And it's going to be real simple, weld on pieces, drill some holes, and be done. So that brings up another issue. And that's the thing about hot rods. When you're building a hot rod, it's not like building a 66 Mustang. If I want to put an exhaust and headers, I just buy exhaust and headers that somebody's already designed and fitted for a Mustang. Headers-wise, the Mustang headers snug the block too tight and causes too many problems with the starters. So I've been searching, trying to find applications for hot rods, and I found a really nice set of stainless steel headers that drop straight down. They don't hug the block. I can put a shield for the starter, so I can solve that issue. So now is the perfect time for me to figure the exhaust too. Exhaust seems like it's way ahead of the game. Normally, geez, I've had cars done before I finally put exhaust in. When I did my custom Buick, I bought a kit, stuck it in. Same thing with the Pontiac. My 60 Pontiac I did a couple of years ago. Bought a kit, stuck it in. This is going to be different. Something like this, normally I would wait and take it to a muffler shop and just have them do it. It's cheap, it's quick, it's easy. They do all the work. But with all of this that I'm still playing with, once I figure out this cross member, how I'm going to put that in, well, how is my exhaust going to run around that? If there's a way of doing the exhaust and changing this motor mount so it's easier to run the exhaust, then now's the time to do it. And one of the things I found out is when I made all the frame nice and pretty for my Buick custom frame, then I'm coming back in and having to drill holes in it, and I had to make some slight modifications, and then I'm having to repaint. And so now that everything is greasy and rusty and beat up, this is the perfect time to mock up everything that I need to do for this chassis. The 4-link rear suspension, the rear end, the exhaust, all of my plumbing, everything I want to do while it's just open and simple and easy. And then if I have to bore different holes in these cross members to make the exhaust work, definitely now is the time to do it. So now that I have these dimensions, let me figure out a little bit more here on how the placement is, and then I've got to pull this motor back out. I have a pretty good idea where I want this all to sit now. I just have a channel going across underneath the transmission mount, but this tail section is about 1 inch too low. I need to raise that up into this area for the stick shift, and I need to cut this out first. You can also see there's a bolt broke off here in the end of the transmission, and that's where the linkage bolts to for the stick shift. So I need to get that out of the side of the tail. So I feel like a mad scientist at this point. I'm putting together my Frankenstein monster, and I need to buy a few things now. I need to buy the headers, the exhaust, the mufflers, and all my 4-link rear suspension, so that I can fine-tune all the placement of all those pieces. And yeah, I'm just moving ahead on this chassis. I thought this chassis was going to take me a lot longer than it has. It's come along great. Thanks for watching.